Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 22 of Dororo, and I'm a little bit nervous. I'm a little bit nervous because last episode seemed like, okay, we're gonna have this confrontation between Tahomaru and Hyakkimaru. We all knew it was coming, but then things took a turn, and now Dororo's been kidnapped, and Hyakkimaru is without his support system, which we've established when that happens, things aren't good with Hyakkimaru. So it feels like, though, we have a repeat of when Dororo was taken away, Hyakkimaru had to figure out what to do. And they came across Jukai, and Jukai managed to give them some perspective and make Hyakkimaru realize what he wanted. The problem is, now Hyakkimaru has realized what he wanted, and what he wants is to have his body back and be with Dororo, but now there's not a Jukai to balance things out. And that has me a little bit concerned. Just a wee bit concerned. And I'm like, ah! So we got to figure out what to do. So there's that. But anyway, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen these next 3 episodes. I can't believe we only have 3 episodes left. It is wild. I do have a comment that is from Anime Annie involving episode 19, which was the fun episode, the levity episode, the ha episode. They said the cultural significance of the tenugui hand towel that Dororo tied around their face is the Japanese equivalent to the Western version of a thief wearing a balaclava or a ski mask. So I've noticed that in some Japanese, in some anime that are making references, I have noticed when they're trying to go for a more comedy route, they'll have the character wear the tenugui, and it's just meant for more comedy. Because in reality, like, yes, it is hiding your face to an extent. It is effective, but I feel like in modern times there is more of a comedic element to it because it's like, but I definitely thought that I was like, I've seen that in several different anime before. And so now I know the cultural significance of it. So thank you for that. They also said, I always thought Munetsuna wanted to purify Hyakkimaru's swords, not because he killed demons with them, but rather because he spilled human blood with them. And when I read that comment, I had already watched episode 21. I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Look at Hyakkimaru having his swords cleansed from having the blood of Mio's murderers on them. Everything's fine. And then he slashed off the arms of Mutsu and Hyogo within that next episode. And I was like, uh-oh. And sliced through, even though he sliced through, the one guy that turned into NUI, he was a demon when he technically sliced through him at that point. But I was like, oh no, Mutsu and Hyogo, we've gotten human blood back on the swords. We've already gotten them, like, dirtied after they were just purified, damn it. And I have a feeling, and the blood of his brother Tahomaru on them. So I don't know. I was like, why can't we have nice things? But yeah, I'm really curious to see what we're going to get in this episode. Here's what I think is going to happen. It's not going to be pretty. We've got 3 episodes left. It's not going to be pretty. This episode feels like to me, it's going to set up the last 2. Because the last 2 usually have like your penultimate episode, which I feel like is going to be the climax. And then the climax will end at episode 24, and then we'll have our resolution. But I'm like, how is Daigo getting involved in this? Is Daigo going to be responsible for his crimes? How is Tahomaru going to deal with all this? What about the mom? How is she going to get involved? Are they going to take Dororo to the mom? That'd be great because Dororo could talk to her, since they're the 2 that, of all the people surrounding Hyakkimaru, with the exception of Jukai, care about him seemingly the most. I would argue Jukai and Dororo care about Hyakkimaru the most, and the mom is a 3rd, but that's just because she's not been around him a lot, so maybe this will change that, and maybe Dororo can find out about the land no longer being, maybe the mom can tell Dororo about the deal being broken because Dororo would be the only person that would listen to her. And then Dororo can go tell Tahomaru and Hyakkimaru himself or herself. Yeah. But I feel like this is not going to be a fun episode. I got my coffee this morning. I got everything ready and I was like, this is not going to be a fun time. But who knows? Maybe it will be. Maybe it'll be great. And I just have to tell myself that. But Thank you all so much for the comments and for watching. I can't believe we're nearing the end. There are 2 episode advertisement breaks towards the midway point of this episode, so that's good. It's not towards the end. When I see an ad break towards the end, I'm like, it's going to be in this big dramatic moment, and then you bitches are going to give us an ad. How dare you? So anyway, we're going to start Dororo episode 22, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll see you all on the other side. When the OP ends and it's so serene and quiet and the lyrics are like, I'd love to just, be able to touch your face one day and see you and just go off into the sunshine and sunset and roses. And then you see what happens in this episode. I don't know how in the next 2 episodes they're going to end it with any sense of peace. I don't know how they're going to be able to do that. I just don't know. I honestly don't know how they're going to be able to do that, because this episode was, it was a lot more setup for next week than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to get more into the battle between Hyakkimaru, which we kind of did, but I thought we were going to get a little bit more earnest into their duel, and then at the very end they show up, but why is everything so complicated? Oh my gosh. Why is everything so complicated? So we need to talk about that in this episode. A lot of the story of the NUI, which, what does NUI mean in Japanese? Does that mean demon? Japanese meaning? What is it? To sew or to stitch? To stitch together. Well, actually, that kind of makes sense, because we had the arms stitched back together at the end with the demons. Hyogo and Mutsu have become demons, so great. They've sold their souls. Awesome. And then you also have Jukai, who stitches people back together by giving the parts back together. And then you have Dororo stitching together the relationship between Hyakkimaru and the mom, just through this episode. This episode also talks a lot about ways to find redemption and ways to atone. And so I feel like for each of the characters in this series that are in rough places right now, Tahomaru, Mutsu, and Hyogo for sure are in rough places. Hyakkimaru's in a rough place. For the 4 of them, I do think there are ways for them to possibly redeem themselves and possibly atone. Jukai is a great example of atonement. Jukai has done something wrong, is aware of what they've done wrong, and is actively working now to try and find ways to rectify that. And whether those ways are feasible or the best ways are debatable, depending on who you ask. But at least Jukai understands what they did. They stopped killing, and they've moved now into trying to rectify and redeem themselves. And I think that's a big part of it. Is when you recognize you've done something wrong and you've done something horrible, and you try to do things that are helping people to make up for it. You may never be able to earn those people's forgiveness back, which we're going to talk about. You may never be able to fully get to where you once were, which we're going to talk about. But there's a way for you to move forward and try to attain peace of soul and peace of mind, and not keep being evil. The crazy thing about all of this is I feel like that's what Jukai's done. Biwamaru, we don't exactly think he's done anything horrible in the past. He has a knife on him, but it seems more for self-defense, so he's kind of out of it. Dororo's a freaking saint. Dororo is a saint. The saintliest of all the saints, so they're fine. Then we have the mom. The mom has realized that she's done wrong, and she wants to rectify that. And she's like, and girl, I don't blame her for running off. She's like, well, my husband doesn't believe me. My other son doesn't want to talk to me. Nobody's giving me, they respect me, but they don't really give me the time of day. And I really need to reconnect with my kid before the end. So yeah, I'm going to go off with Dororo. And Dororo seems like a nice kid. And plus Dororo kind of gives her that sense of motherhood that she has felt neglected from how many episodes. So I don't blame the mom for going with Dororo. I totally get it. I think it's important that she knows she's done wrong, but she still loves Dororo. She still loves Hyakkimaru, and she wants Hyakkimaru to know that. And I think she is fully aware and prepared that her son could kill her, and she thinks that, yeah, I kind of deserve it. I turned my back on my child for the sake of my husband and my people, but I turned the back on my child, who is supposed to be the most precious thing to me, that I said was the most precious thing to me, and I abandoned them in their time of need for the bigger cause. And she's like, and the thing about it is, for her, that, yeah, we can look at it from an objective sense, and it's the trolley problem. This whole episode is, again, the trolley problem. Like, do you protect the one person or do you protect all of the people? And the thing about it is, I can see everyone in the comments, you can justify it from both sides. You can say, well, Hyakkimaru is killing all these people that are soldiers that are killing other people to save Dororo. And the reason why they're doing it is justified because of X, Y, and Z. But then you can also say, well, Tahomaru and Mutsu and Hyogo are protecting their people against Hyakkimaru and killing him because of X, Y, and Z. And depending on where your personal background and feelings lie, you can find ways to justify all sorts of things. And this episode really paints both Tahomaru and Hyakkimaru in the wrong. There are ways for them to rectify that within the next 2 episodes. I don't think they're going to do that next week. I think it's going to be episode 24, if anything. But the importance is that the mom realizes that she did wrong, that she tried to justify abandoning her child for the sake of her people. The irony is that she abandoned her son for the sake of the people, and then the people abandoned her. She sacrificed her son because she was like, I believe in the values of Daigo and my land. And then guess what happens? Daigo abandons her. Her son, Tahomaru, abandons her. The people don't really care about her. And she's like, okay, I have to live with that. And I think by the end of it, when she's like, if he kills me, I'm ready for that because I've mentally prepared myself for the atonement that I would have to do going back to see him. But the important thing is that Dororo and the mom love Hyakkimaru at the end of the day. And I think that the one thing that can save Hyakkimaru is knowing someone is there caring for them and wanting them to do good despite all that they've done in the past. And I would argue that there are some people that you're probably not going to reach that have done horrible things. And that's just the true thing of life. But part of my graduate degree in communications was dealing with mediation, and we did a thing called restorative justice that we talked about in mediation and conflict resolution. That was something that was part of my grad studies for that degree. And we watched a lot of mediation between people and I've talked about this with other series where it's come up, but there was one video and it has such a profound impact on me that there was a man that he murdered when he was younger, he murdered someone in like a hit and run. And then he was arrested and put in prison for like 2nd-degree murder. And then during this mediation process, they videotaped it and we watched the simulation that we watched it unfold. But the mediator was there, and that's kind of what our role would be. And we were just facilitating a discussion between the murderer and the person who was murder's mother. And they had a conversation. And it was so powerful because as the mediator, we're supposed to allow this conversation to happen. And it was a very tense conversation. And the mom was like, why did you do this to my son? Why did you kill him? What was going on? And the person who had been convicted said, yeah, I did murder him and it was wrong. And this is where my headspace was. This is what I did. This is why I did it. I'm not happy about it. I'm not proud of it. I wish I could go back and change it, but I can't. Your son is dead. There's nothing I can do about that. And the biggest thing of it, and I get emotional talking about it because it was so powerful to watch, but the thing about it was the mom was like, I can't forgive you for taking that from me, but she's like, I can't move on with my life until I know your story and we clarify things and move forward. I'm not going to forgive you, and you've got to, pay that price for taking that life away. But she's like, I'm not going to hate you forever. I'm going to move on with my life. And it was really powerful. And it kind of just talked about the fact that usually when people do an act of violence or do a crime, I mean, there are some cases where people are just awful people. And they're just awful people. They do awful things. And when you do get down to it and break down the layers, there's something sick and wrong underneath there. And there are people like that do exist. And then there are other people that are kind of emphasized in this series that do violent things for reasons that they believe are justification for their existence or for payback or for revenge or for the circumstances they're in. They just happen. And then when they go back, they realize what they've done. And if people communicate with them and reach out to them, there is a way of moving forward from that. And so, because we're all human, we're all capable of doing horrible things and feeling like they are justified. But the question is, are we a horrible person, or is it just the circumstance and the reasoning behind it that causes those actions to happen? And if that's the case, what do we do to move forward from it? So that kind of influences a lot. And I know I give Tahomaru and his crew a hard time because I'm like, well, you're kind of hypocrites in a way, because, you know, you're condemning Hyakkimaru for being a demon, but yet you just made a deal with the devil and became demons yourself. So at this point, you're kind of all hypocrites, but you have reasons for doing it. And Hyakkimaru has reasons for doing it. So it's like, well, how do we move forward from that? The one person that frustrates me the most, though, is Daigo in all of this. Daigo's off waiting for this battle. He's the orchestrator of all of this. All of this happening is because of his decisions. And granted, these characters have made individual decisions themselves that have gotten them deeper into the conflict and have made it worse. But the first domino to fall was Daigo making the deal with the devil. And it's just created this cycle that now Tahomaru and Mutsu and Hyogo have perpetuated, that now Hyakkimaru is perpetuating, and that Dororo is literally the only thing that can break. Which is why the series is called Dororo, I'm sure. But it's one of those things where Daigo has not... my thing is, Daigo's had to bear no responsibility. Hyakkimaru's bearing responsibility. Tahomaru's bearing responsibility. The mom's bearing responsibility. Daigo's over here like, well, I'm the savior of the land. What do you expect? And I don't know if Daigo will ever bear responsibility. That's the sad thing, is that people get implicated in things like this, and then the person that actually should probably answer for these things doesn't end up answering. And it gets thrown off to someone else that's gotten caught up in it and implicated even further. And so if that's not adjacent to real life, I don't exactly know what else is. But I wondered if Jukai in this episode was going to run into Hyakkimaru, but I feel like it was just a moment. I don't think Jukai is going to come back, maybe at the very, very end, but I don't think Jukai is going to come back in this series. I think post-script, Jukai might meet up with Hyakkimaru again, maybe. But I do like the idea that Jukai is still trying to find his purpose and figure out what he's going to do moving forward. So, again, you can move forward if you take the appropriate steps. But Hyakkimaru's just pissed. Just pissed. He's like, my body's gone. You took away the person I cared about after I got them back. And then this horse is over here. Midoro's over here like, yeah, bitch, they took my cult away and they murdered me by making me a hand grenade. Can you believe that? So then I'm not surprised they teamed up at all. And the thing about it is, you have two beings who have been used by the system, who have been used by Daigo, used by his army, mutilated, and in the horse's case, murdered by the system. And they're both just like, F the police, we're gonna go and get our way through. Now, I would be a little bit more easygoing on Hyakkimaru if he had just hopped on that horse and they just like a tornado blazed through everybody and just made their way and everybody moved out of the way. But Hyakkimaru is not easily forgiven or taken out of implication in this episode because he's literally slaughtering people left and right. And it's so heartbreaking because you're like, you don't want Hyakkimaru to become a demon. You don't want him to get into this. And now it's just demons fighting demons. Now it's just Hyakkimaru is a demon almost, or practically at this point. Tahomaru has given up his body to the demon to try to kill Hyakkimaru. Hyogo and Mutsu have given up their souls to the demon to try to save the people. And it gets to the point where the funny thing about all of this is, as the mom told us like 6 episodes ago, she's like, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. The moment that the goddess of mercy saved Hyakkimaru's body at the beginning 16 years ago, the moment that happened, we were on a time clock and this was going to run out regardless. And she's like, so it's kind of the mom's fault that all this is breaking down because she prayed to the goddess of mercy and the goddess of mercy listened, but nobody's saying anything about that. But the thing about it is, everything Hyakkimaru is doing, Hyakkimaru doesn't care about Daigo's people, and you can't blame him because Daigo's people don't really care about him. So he's like, why do I care? I just want Dororo, my body, and I want to leave here and peace out, right? It's basically the plot of a Danmai. It's basically the plot of a Danmai. It's like, I just want to get all of my rights and privileges and the person I love, and I want to leave this place, and you all can do whatever you want. That's literally a Danmai plot. That's an MXTX story in a nutshell. But it's one of those things where if he had just been able to kill the demons and get his body back, he would have left. But now everybody's implicated and involved because they believe that killing Hyakkimaru is going to save their people and their land. But here's the thing. Hyakkimaru is not the Asakura army that is invading. They're not connected to Hyakkimaru. So even if you killed Hyakkimaru today, you've sold your soul to a demon who is a demon and probably greedier than you think they are. And so they're probably going to keep taking and taking and taking more because they're demons. That's what they do. And at the end of the day, you're also not going to solve the war problem because they're still there. Your people are already going to be famished and everything because the deal was off a long time ago. And of course, the demon with the 3 faces isn't going to say that. They're not going to say that because they don't want you to know. I can't believe that the 2 eyeballs that are Hyakkimaru's eyes are now inside Tahomaru. I guess that'll keep maybe Hyakkimaru from severing them because he wants those eyes back. Maybe that'll keep him from severing them because he wants his eyeballs back. But that's just taunting. The demon is just taunting Hyakkimaru, being like, oh, you want these eyes back? Well, now they're on your brother, so you have to kill your brother to get your eyes back. What the fudge, right? Because that's literally what's going to happen now. The demon has taken over the body of Hyogo. It's got the 2 arms. The demon's 2 arms are now fused with Hyogo and Mutsu. So now you've got to kill Hyogo and Mutsu, and you've got to kill Tahomaru to get your eyeballs back. And at that point, you've killed everybody around you. I want this series to end happily, but I don't know how that's possible. Because everybody's going to have to die for Hyakkimaru to get his body back. And the thing about it is, if damn Mutsu hadn't gone to the Hall of Hell, it's one of those things where I want to feel bad because I don't want Tahomaru to die. I don't want Hyogo and Mutsu to die, but they shot themselves in the foot. They went to the Hall of Hell and asked to have a deal with the demon. And I'm like, you're going to kill Hyakkimaru because he's supposedly a demon hurting your land, but then you're willing to become demons too to do it? Like, it just shows, I mean, similar to like Attack on Titan and other series, it just shows that once you implicate yourself into the cycle of violence, once you get involved, all of your arguments where you talk about how bad the other side is kind of become null and void because you've brought yourself into the cycle. You are now on the same level of wrong as the other party. So you can try to justify it all you want, but it does not matter at that point. The moment you incite that violence, you are part of the problem. You are just as responsible, and you can't just be a hypocrite and say, well, they're a demon because you're now a demon too. And the series literally makes that symbolism real in the series. It makes something that's canonical into denotative the moment that they made that deal with the devil and added those parts to them. I thought it was really interesting how you have the 3 facets of the Daigo symbol. And the demon, that's the 12th demon, has 3 heads. And now you have 3. You have Hyogo, Mutsu, and Tahomaru. I mean, the number 3 is pretty important. Biwamaru, I was wanting to hear what he said about all this because he's very critical of Hyakkimaru and all this. But I don't know. I don't know how we're getting through all this. I will say, we only get like 1 shot of Daigo in this entire episode. And he looks legitimately terrified. He's like, oh yeah, we're gonna stop this army and we're gonna be perfectly fine in this rain and everything's great, but he looks like he's not sure that any of this is gonna work. And I'm like, it'd be cool if you bear some responsibility in all of this, you know. The thing that got me was we had 2 camps. We had the camp where Tahomaru and Hyogo and Mutsu were. We had that camp where everybody was getting treated. And then we kind of had the after camp on the other side of town where all the people that were disabled or injured that had healed up, there was another camp where they were getting treated as well. And a part of me at first was like, oh, well, maybe Dororo and Hyakkimaru can come stay with these people. But it's all going to hell in a handbasket. I don't know how Dororo will help protect them in the future. I'm glad we got confirmation that Mutsu's a woman. I had wondered that the entire time and they didn't really draw any attention to it. It's not a big deal. It doesn't matter what gender or sex she is, but I just wanted confirmation just for my own personal knowledge so that I was giving the right pronouns. But yeah. And so this is my thing. This is my thing. She is kind of the whole, she kind of is the catalyst of all this going even worse, is that she has the plague. She could have literally, I mean, granted, she gets her plague healed by the demon, but she's kind of like the catalyst that makes this even worse. So I can only feel sorry for them up to a point, but then I'm like, but you all just made this worse. And I know why they did it and their reasoning for all of that. It all makes sense. And their emotions here, like I get why they're all sad around each other. Like, you know, we swore to protect one another. We did all this. And you get why they did these actions, but it doesn't justify the fact that they are bad actions. Like, don't sell yourself to a demon. Like, that's what Daigo did. And here's the thing, though. Daigo didn't sell himself to the demon. That's the worst part about it. Daigo sold his son to the demons, and now his other son has been sold to the demons. So, no, Daigo, and the worst part about it is Daigo. He was too cowardly because he knew it was a bad idea. He's like, oh, don't sell yourself to a demon. That's a terrible idea. So he was too cowardly, and he sold his son instead because he didn't want to take personal responsibility for himself. He has literally actively done things throughout this series to encourage Tahomaru to have that thinking that it would be okay to sell myself to a demon if it meant protecting my people. And now he's done it. And so I'm like, oh, you wanted your son to take over from you? But I don't know. I feel like Hyakkimaru will live because I want him and Dororo to be together at the end. I feel like they'll live and be able to go off together. I don't know how that's going to work out at this point, but I feel like this is very much going to be like spoilers for Shakespeare because as if you've not watched Shakespeare, I feel like it's going to be a Hamlet situation where Tahomaru, Daigo, maybe even the mom, they all die. And then Hyakkimaru just has Dororo left. And then the Asakura and them come in and sweep up the land and take it over. All because of Daigo just perpetuating this narrative that wasn't quite accurate. And that's the thing, because yeah, it was just, Dororo's wish is for Hyakkimaru to stay the way that he is and not become a demon. I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know how. I feel like as long as someone can love you, there's a chance of redemption. If someone cares about you, then there's a chance, right? Because Hyakkimaru cared about Jukai found that the redemption was possible because Hyakkimaru cared about him. And I feel like because Dororo cares about Hyakkimaru, and no matter what happens to Hyakkimaru, Dororo is going to stay by his side because that's her brother, that there's a chance for Hyakkimaru to get pulled back. I don't know about Tahomaru and the other two. I don't want Hyakkimaru to kill them, but I think he's going to have to get his eyes back. And that sucks. And that's literally Tahomaru's own fault. It's his own fault. Because he didn't have to make the deal with the demon. He really didn't. And Mutsu and Hyogo kind of propagated that. Why can't we have nice things, show? Why can't we have nice things? So, the mom, I like the mom breaking out Dororo. That is not what I expected to happen. I honestly thought Dororo would be taken straight to the mom, but it makes sense why he wasn't, because why would you take a prisoner of war straight to the mom? But I do like her breaking him out. I like her shucking her beautiful silk kimonos to be like, nope, don't need these anymore. I like the symbol of her wealth and prosperity. She's like, I'm choosing to be a mother over the leader's wife, which good, because Daigo may love her, but he's not great to her. So, you know, and Hyakkimaru has not been terrible to her, but we don't know if he still loves her or not. And so I do like the idea that Dororo learns everything about the history of what happened to Hyakkimaru, and Dororo saying, why does he have to go through all this? Like, he wouldn't be the way he was if Daigo hadn't made that deal with the devil. You could have avoided all of this. Tahomaru still could have been born. They still could have had him, but it's really Daigo that's caused all of this. But it's gotten to the point where you can't just blame Daigo for everything, because these are people with their own free will, but Daigo has orchestrated and laid the foundation for the path that's led them all here. So what do we do? But yeah, I'm glad the mom decides to go with Dororo. I'm glad she shucks aside her robes to go. I'm also glad she's not necessarily like having ideations anymore. She really wants to stay alive to see him through to the end. So good for that. We've made progress. But yeah, Mutsu just choosing to go to the demon to sacrifice her body to help Tahomaru. Girl, I get why they do it, but I'm like, what can you say, right? And then the horse showing up. I like at first Hyakkimaru was beside the horse, and then it was just like, just bloodlust, right? And the thing about it is, of all the demons that we've seen in this series so far, most of the demons we've seen were either already demons or we don't get their backstory. We do get the one that was way back around with the sword maker. We do get that, even though they weren't a demon, they were accomplice. This is the first time we've seen like these. I don't know if I would call Hyakkimaru a self-made. Well, Hyakkimaru and Midoro were both demons that were created from a human's actions, which is kind of like where Tahomaru and Hyugu and Mutsu are at this point. But it's like Hyakkimaru and Midoro were mutilated by humanity and then came back pissed. And it's like, yep, that's what would you have done? What would you have done? The thing about it is, I don't know if at the very end, the Midoro is going to see her cult at the end and then like go off with the cult, or if the cult's going to run away, or what's going to happen. Right? Because I don't feel bad for Midoro. Midoro was literally taken in and abused by people and used as a human hand grenade. I don't feel bad that she lit that guy on fire with the flamethrower at the end. I was like, that's kind of what he deserves. You didn't have to kill the horse. And that's the thing. People will be like, people might say, well, but he was just doing an act of war. He could have tied the grenades to himself. And that's kind of the Daigo thing. If you really wanted to be self-sacrificing for your people, you could have tied the grenades to yourself and jumped at Hyakkimaru. You could have done that. But he wasn't going to do that because that would have killed him. So instead, we'll kill someone else because their life doesn't matter, but my life matters. And that's a very human thing to do. And you get why people do that. But it's like, now you're reaping what you sowed. You killed this horse because you didn't want to take ownage and responsibility in the moment. Well, now guess what, bitch? It's coming back to bite you. And that's kind of the thing why I stick around Hyakkimaru. This episode, I'm like, oh, you're killing a lot of people. That's not good. That's not necessary. Yikes. Not good. But the reason I've stuck around Hyakkimaru and kind of took sides with him up until this point was because that he just wanted his body back because it was something that was taken from him by this cowardly set of demons that didn't need the body parts for any other reason other than just malice. And you can't blame him for wanting it back. But now it's like, you've killed a lot of people and you get why, but it's like, that's still not a good action. You still shouldn't do that. So it's like, Dororo's my favorite character because I empathize so much with Dororo. I'm like, also, damn, the Oregon Trail aspect of them in the boat and it losing track of it. I was like, no. Granted, Dororo's like a 10-year-old kid, so you get why they couldn't control the boat very well. And she's never captained a boat, so the mom didn't know what to do. But yeah, whenever Dororo's like, I'm sure that maybe Hyakkimaru isn't responsible for all this bloodshed. Well, the horse is implicated too, so maybe we'll give the horse 30% of the blame or 70% of the blame. Or is it 50-50? But yeah, I fully anticipate at the end the baby cult either reuniting with Midoro or the baby cult being freed. Because that's kind of what Dororo gets at. Being like, you don't need your mom anymore. You can be on your own. Now, then of course there's the question, is Dororo going to walk off with Biwamaru? And is Hyakkimaru and Tahomaru both going to die? And is Dororo going to be by themselves at the end and be that line, you don't need your mom anymore. You could take a number of different ways. You could be Dororo, because Dororo's kind of latched on to Hyakkimaru's mom in this episode. You could take it as Dororo kind of realizing they don't really need their mom figure anymore. They can move forward and still remember her. You could also take it as if Hyakkimaru dies, Dororo's like, well, I can move forward without them if I need to, but I don't want them to. I want Hyakkimaru to get their eyesight back and to see Dororo for the first time. But the question is Hyakkimaru going to kill Tahomaru and also get killed themselves? And in their last moment before they die, see Dororo and then die, but see them right before then? I'm like, show, if you're going to do that whole Hamlet deal, that's going to suck a lot. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I want Hyakkimaru to gain their body back and be able to run off with Dororo. But I don't know if that's going to happen or if they're going to kill all of them off, all of Daigo's lineage. And then it's just going to be a really sad story about why we don't sacrifice children to demons, because then all this bullshit tragedy will happen. I just don't know at this point. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait till episode 33, 23, and 34. I don't know if I'm going to be able to wait. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of important things happening with Dororo throughout this episode. Dororo has been able to see on this journey all of the struggles of the various people around throughout this war and all that they've been, like, I feel like everything Dororo is seeing, like the struggles of the people, what the war is doing, all of that is leading Dororo to be able to grow up and make executive decisions about their life that will help them to be nuanced and understand what's going on so that they can make valuable decisions and maybe lead people in the future. They still got that treasure way off on that island. So if they grow up and they're like, okay, now I'm going to go get that wealth and help the people with it now that I'm an adult and I know what I'm doing. I don't know. This episode definitely made me come to the idea that Dororo might lose Hyakkimaru and have to move on without them, but they might be able to do that. But obviously they don't want to do that. And I don't want Hyakkimaru to die after all they've done. And as far as they've come, I don't want them to be a demon and die. But I'm starting to like reserve the idea that they might, because I don't know how Hyakkimaru can kill Tahomaru and Hyogo Mutsu and be able to move on. But that's kind of one of the themes of the story, is that it's possible, but it's like, that's a heavy blow. And I don't know if that's going to be possible. I don't know. I'm a little bit worried. I like that the mom at least helps them out. The townspeople kind of get mad at her because they're like, this is kind of Daigo's fault. And the one guy's like, well, we can't totally blame it on Daigo. He did it because he believed it would save the land. Like, you get that, but that's kind of, I don't know. When I hear that argument, because the one guy's like, well, but, was he really doing it to save the land? Or here's the problem. I get what he's saying, that Daigo did it because he wanted to save the land. If you were talking about Tahomaru, I would believe you. And I'd be like, no, Tahomaru has done everything he has because he genuinely believes in saving his people. We established from the first couple of episodes that Daigo is doing things for his own ambition, not necessarily because he is, sympathetic to the people, but because he wants to be remembered as a great leader and have a legacy. That's what he wants. It's more about him putting himself up on a pedestal and saying, look at how great I was, rather than, oh, I really want to be a philanthropist and help the people. That's what it is. And we, the audience, learned that at the start. So now that it's all coming back around, everybody's like, well, Daigo was just doing it because he wants to save and believed it would save the land. That feels like gaslighting. It's like, no. Remember back at the start when we were like, no, Daigo don't give a shit about the people. He just wanted to be known as a great king, a great ruler. Tahomaru's the one that genuinely wants to help the people. He doesn't care about legacy, but Daigo's a different story. And everybody's been kind of brainwashed and gaslit through the story spread around the village that Daigo's a great benevolent ruler, and that's not true. But it just reminded me of real life when there's like big corporate CEOs that are like, I'm doing this to help the people, but their actions are actively hurting others. Not that we see that happen in real life. I'm just kind of like, no, hold on, back it up. So that's kind of like, that's my view on Daigo. I'm like, no. But I do get when the one guy is like, I feel miserable just sitting here not being able to do anything. Because that's a very human reaction. When you feel like there's nothing you can do and you feel helpless. That's a very human emotion and reaction. And that's kind of, Hyakkimaru is going through the extreme version of that, because they feel helpless not being able to help Dororo, and it has made them become violent. That's kind of the big ultimate, end result of that. And Tahomaru and Mutsu and Hyogo, the end result of their helplessness was making a deal with the devil to gain power, which is also problematic. But yeah, Dororo being like, I heard you lost your mother. And of course, Biwamaru's like, what a dramatic entrance. And then Dororo saying, what does Dororo say there as he's feeding the horse hay? He's like, I'm thinking. He says, eat up. You don't need your mother to live. And maybe that's part of it. Like, maybe Dororo's thinking about how you don't need the body parts to live and how they're going to tell Hyakkimaru that. Hopefully we'll see. And so then the mom talks about, there was a white flash explaining the demons and everything. And the thing that gets me about the mom is that even when her child looked the way that Hyakkimaru did as a baby, she still loved him. against all odds. It was like the mom in Hunchback of Notre Dame. She still loved him. And I can forgive her for a lot of things because of her unconditional love, even when she has wavered because of Daigo gaslighting her the most he could. And of course, Dororo was like, we have to stop him from becoming a demon. Well, you know, that's going to be hard because Hyakkimaru and Tahomaru and all of them seem like demons at this point. It's really bad. It's really bad. I was just like, and of course, the demon's like, I can't, stop hurting you all unless I have Hyakkimaru, so I'll give you some of my power so you can go face him. He's probably just headed for Daigo. Yep. Well, true, but then there's all this other stuff going on. And then, of course, there's literally Tahomaru has his two eyes taunting him with the eyes that he should have. And Hyakkimaru's like, those are mine. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. The only thing I don't like the idea that Hyogo has his weapon and is armed to use it, because that's very bad. The only thing I feel slightly okay with is that Mutsu doesn't seem to have their bow and arrow, because that was a big problem, but they have a sword too. I don't like this 3-on-1. No, I don't like it at all. That's not fair. Ugh. Why, show? Why are we so complicated? Why are we making everything sad? I don't know. I want this series to have a happy ending. I really do. But I don't know how in 2 episodes we're going to have a happy ending. I do not know how that's possible. And I wish these 2 brothers would have not been... If these 2 brothers could have had the chance to talk and communicate from the start and then realize their dad is responsible for all this shit... It's literally Hamlet. It's damn Shakespeare. It's a Shakespearean tragedy. And I'm like... So anyway, I'm real curious what you all think about this episode. This episode was just anxiety, the episode, and just set up for horrible things to come, and I'm not excited about any of it. So anyway, I'm really curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah. Next week is the penultimate episode, so we'll see how that goes. But I'll be back very soon with the penultimate episode of Dororo. Bye.